Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here today. So my name is Harriet Thomson, and it's a great pleasure to be chairing such an important panel. We've got expert speakers from various specialities who are involved with tackling energy poverty across Europe. And I think we're going to have a really, really good session today. So we'll have 4 speakers. They'll give their presentations in turn, and then I'll open it up to you all to ask questions to them. So our first speaker is Marina Cornelis, who is an expert and independent consultant in legal and policy developments concerning EU affairs, energy poverty, consumer protection and dispute resolution. Marina, the floor is yours.
Buona tarde y gracias por la invitación. I'm very happy to be here today. I'm very humbled to be with those 4 amazing ladies. I'm Marina Cornelis, I'm an independent consultant, but I'm also working with Naomi Creutzfeldt on this amazing project about energy poverty and access to justice. Please come this afternoon and listen to what Naomi Creutzfeldt has to say. It's going to be great. I have a few preliminary remarks before starting my presentation. So as we have seen already, energy poverty means a very different situation, very different realities. It can be the quality and the type of the dwelling, energy prices, complex tariffs and contracts, region, climate, support measures, social relation, personal history, belonging to minority, income, etc. And of course, we could also take into consideration age, gender, having kids at home, being the owner of your home or not, overall, energy poverty is very often a notion that people don't acknowledge, and therefore they don't really recognize that they are in energy poverty. It translates into very different symptoms, such as high bills, indoor air pollution, too warm, too cold, leaking homes, health and anxiety, loneliness, difficulties to learn, and when you go to school you have problems, employment issues. Sometimes you're just too ashamed to go to work, and you have too many difficulties to be actually looking for a job. So it can be very, very complicated. Many actors are involved, from governments to private companies, to public structures, to foundations, to welfare centers, research centers, NGOs, regulators, ombudsmen as well. And a bit of answers are provided by each of them. Those answers can be technical, economic, financial, social, legal. But there is not necessarily a good coordination between all those measures. As Anais pointed out very well before, you have different types of measures. I will look first into curative measures, meaning the measures related to the treatment of some of the symptoms, and later about preventive measures, and really kind of try to provide you with some understanding of put that into perspective. I voluntarily decided not to speak about social policy measures such as minimal incomes or social housing, etc., but of course it would be taken into consideration. So about curative measures, for instance, how to deal with expensive bills. There are a few examples of policies that have been set up in different EU countries, such as social tariffs for protected consumers in Belgium, electricity and gas bonuses upon request for eligible families, such as what is done in Italy or even in Spain, the partially automatic chèque énergie in France, the prepaid meters to top up consumption in Great Britain and in Belgium as well, the tariff caps in GB that is set to be implemented in the coming weeks, also emergency funds by social welfare centers in order to pay the bills at the last minute, and also some kind of policies, private policies with microdonation, encouraging people to give a little bit of money for other people to pay the bills. There are also free energy in some cases. It was a policy that just thought about it. This policy was set up in Flanders, in Belgium, until 2 years ago. They decided to get rid of it. But this idea of having a minimum bag of energy per family member was something that existed before in Belgium. However, for those curative measures, you have some limits. For instance, those tools work best when they are supplied automatically. You don't have to request them. But the thing is, it can be extremely complicated. It's not always user-friendly. The amounts are often too low to make a sufficiently big difference. So it's just like a drop in the water of when people are drowning. It's just a very tiny help. Bureaucracy is very often a very big impediment. There are so many different documents to show. People sometimes say they feel naked because they have to provide so many documents all the time to so many administration. It's just impossible to deal with this. And for instance, what about if the household doesn't pay taxes? It happens sometimes that or quite often that the policy measure depends on the level of taxes paid by the family. What if this family doesn't pay taxes? What if their income is so low that they just don't even think about filling the taxes form? It's not sustainable. Some of these tools are not sustainable. Every year, the help is to be provided. It supposes a strong involvement of social workers and access to information. It very often lacks. There is not enough people working on this, or not enough well-informed or well-trained people. And of course, it doesn't address the question of the poor quality of the building or the way energy is used, because it's also a parameter that has to be taken into account. It's not only about the building, it's also about what you do with your energy. If, for instance, you put a wardrobe in front of a radiator, it doesn't heat, and that's just something that may sound basic, but for some families, something that they hadn't taken into consideration. And of course, the climate sustainability or the environment issues are not really well addressed. About preventive measures, meaning the policies that have a long-term impact addressing energy efficiency. As we have seen with Lara's speech, energy efficiency is one of the priorities at EU level, but also in many different countries. So you have, for example, some programs to fix the homes with incentives and zero interest rate loans, such as Habiter Mieux in France. You hear the ESCOs, energy service companies, play a very big role. There is also a big program that is active here in Catalonia as well. It's the Europe-based program, trying to address the question of the quality of the building and incentives. Providing personalized advice and backing is something that works well. Well, we have very good representative here of the TED program in Italy with Marina, and the Ponents Energètica with Marta, of course. But the equivalent programs also exist in France, for instance, with the SLIM program. It's something that is funded thanks to private fundings, but it's like public program, so it's very interesting. But many of them do still lack the possibility to make home visits to the people in need. But the good thing is that thanks to this kind of program, you also are able as a policymaker to develop professional trainings and insertion of some publics that would be left behind, and you give more sense of solidarity within the community. And I think it's one of the interesting aspects. Another very good idea that is now taking off in Belgium is the renting of energy efficient appliances. Instead of buying a very energy efficient dishwasher or washing machine, or you just rent it. And the cost of maintenance are also included, so you don't have to make the investment upfront, which is often something that is missing. The sharing economy and the cooperatives can be also a good way to deal with to deal as preventive measures. Also collective switching in certain circumstances, and of course all of this may not have energy poverty as the center of their policies, but it may be something that is it can have a positive impact on the people that are energy poor. And one of the boldest policies that I've seen so far is being promoted in France. There is this project to prohibit lenders from renting thermal sieves. So it means very inefficient housing should be prohibited. But of course, this could lead to a black market for housing or increased prices. So of course, we have to be very careful with this. The limit of this, of course, again, always, the question of access to information is essential. It supposes a very good network of very well-trained craftspeople and professionals. So artisans and also social workers and all kinds of workers have to understand what's at stake and know the techniques in order to be very efficient in the long run. It's not because you are doing the energy efficient works in a home that you have to think only about this. You should also, for instance, if the person living in the home is aging, you may have to think about putting a shower instead of a bath. Or you have to think about the building as something that is for the people, not only something that is it, you know. One of the issues is also the access to fundings and financing, the available resources. Very often they are too low, or people just don't know how to access it, which is linked, of course, to the question of the administrative burden and the question of bureaucracy. It can prevent so many people from acting. And we can ask the question, but it's for everything. What happens when someone is illiterate and or doesn't have access to the internet? What if they don't know how to look for the information? What if the bank doesn't want to make the payment even though they are obliged to do so? So it's something, it's a never-ending story. And unfortunately, all of those measures usually are more helpful for owners. Renters can be afraid to ask their owners to do something. They fear tensions with their landlords. So it poses, of course, some questions about enforcement. And yeah, indeed, there are different schemes for social housing and multi-apartment buildings. Some food for thought. Human lives aren't siloed. A solution shouldn't be either. It's necessary to have a global view. There is no planet B, so we have to think about ecologically sustainable solutions. Governance and coordination is key, of course, between all those actors. Trusted parties and intermediaries are essential. Financing is, of course, critical. And when you look at the situation, you shouldn't forget to look at the subjective views of the people living in it. You also should always consider the risk of stigma and be respectful to the people living in the home. And of course, we should never forget that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Whatever the territory, whatever the city, whatever the at EU or national level or at all level. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That was a really interesting presentation. I think has set us up quite nicely for our second speaker, who is Marina Varvesi, who is coordinating the. I think you were next on the list, but. We'll go with you. Marina Varvesi is coordinating a Horizon 2020 project called Assist. Marina was also involved with tackling energy poverty through the Smarter project and is interested in integrating the competencies of different operators to support energy poor consumers.
everybody. Thanks. Thanks to EcoSurveys for organizing and co-organizing this lovely event dedicated to food poverty, energy poverty. And it's a pleasure to be here to speak about ASSIST, which is, as Harriet said, thanks, an Horizon 2020 project specifically on energy poverty. Now, before going into energy poverty, I would just like to say a couple of words on who I represent, which is a company called ISFOR. It is based in Rome. It works in the green sector, and it's a knowledge building training company. It aims to increase knowledge through various actions, including the participation in European projects. And the first one on the list is ASSIST, the project we are here about. It aims to contribute to tackle energy poverty through the creation of a new empowered figure, which we have called the Household Energy Advisor, HEA, and the creation of a network of HEAs and their action on the field. HEA ASSIST, as Harriet already pointed out, is a sort of a follow-up from a previous Horizon 2020 project, which is called Smart Up, which was always together with EcoSurveys on energy poverty. So let's have a look at what ASSIST is all about. Further to what we have said before, we can say that ASSIST is an innovative model, and we will then see what and why this is innovative. But it is mainly based on an integrated approach to tackle energy poverty. It comes within a framework of different European initiatives to tackle energy poverty. I think they started back at the beginning of 2000 with the first European projects. ASSIST officially started in May 2017. It's a 3-year project, so it will go on until April 2020. It involves 12 partners coming from 6 different countries, and here we also have the representative from AAPN, Maria, who will speak later, as well, of course, as Marta. Further to ASSIST, in the initiatives to tackle energy poverty, there's also the launch of the European Poverty Observatory, which you all know and which Harriet here manages. And so there is a lot of dialogue between all the various initiatives on energy poverty. So this is the overview where ASSIST starts and comes from. It, as we all know, it tackles energy poverty. Now, I won't go into the detail on what energy poverty is about, but I did want to insert this slide just to underline once again the complex phenomena that energy poverty is. It is not only energy, it is not only poverty, but it's something to do with social issues, with welfare, with health, with medical issues, with lack of money, so that means also financial issues. It is a very complex and multi-sectorial problem, which, as I said at the beginning, needs an integrated approach. So, on one side, we have this big phenomenon of energy poverty. On the other side, we have our lessons learned from Smart Up and other initiatives, which mainly deal with barriers faced by consumers in their everyday life. Consumers which go from energy poor consumers, vulnerable consumers, but also normal consumers, consumers who are not in these situations. They have a very difficult approach with their energy consumption. In some cases, they still don't see the relation between their consumption habits and their bill. In some cases, especially in deep energy poverty, they have reduced too much their energy consumption. So as a matter of fact, they should not be reducing further their energy consumptions, but they should be increasing that in order to have a more comfortable level. So these are some of the barriers. Another barrier that was faced is the lack of knowledge, or better, lack of integrated knowledge by the actors at the moment on the field assisting consumers on issues to tackle energy poverty. The actors at the moment, mainly the energy actors, are those engaged in supporting consumers on energy issues, whilst the other actors are still not fully aware and not fully competent on issues related to energy poverty. Social actors are behind, but if we think about medical actors, about bank actors, they are still not really competent, and they should play a role on tackling energy poverty. So this was the scenario behind Assist, and this is what we want to do. We want to switch it, turn upside down the situation. Instead of having the consumer in the center, having to deal with all the different actors for each of their problems, what we want to do is to put in the center the HEA. Of course, the HEA will not have a fully highly qualified competence on all the sectors. That's not what we want. What we want is to create a figure who is competent on all the issues related to energy poverty, but has a network of HEAs behind him to provide answers to more specific problems on other sectors, so that the vulnerable consumer, once he has a problem with its energy consumption, he can get in touch with an HEA to answer specific questions, but also to have an overview on all the questions and contacts of people dealing with energy poverty in all the sectors. So what we are planning to do at the moment, what we are doing at the moment is to train these HEAs coming from different backgrounds. This is being done in all the 6 countries. All of us are doing it according to a national strategy. So there are countries focusing on specific sectors rather than others. But the idea is to turn upside down the situation and have a figure competent on energy poverty. Very quickly, going at the end of the project, so the concept of Assist is, tackle energy poverty through the trained of and integrated and empower energy advisors. So we have the training, we have the creation of the network of the HEAs, and the HEAs will then go on the field and actually support people in need on energy poverty. These are the actions in the project. So apart from the training, the network, and the action, we also have an activity which was called the in-depth analysis, carried out at the beginning of the project to verify the situation of energy poverty in all European countries. And then we have another activity which is called the policy orientation, which is part of the work of EAPN. So, going at the end of the presentation, this shows what will be the main outputs of the Assist project. Well, we've mainly focused in this presentation on the training, so that means that we have a training course similar for all the 6 countries in, of course, the 6 national languages, which has been built on a training platform. So we have the training platform. We will then create always on internet, on a platform, the working area where the HEAs can communicate, can dialogue, and can also find the tools and the resources that they will need to implement the action. That's questionnaires, fact sheets, videos, whatever type of tools that can be used for supporting vulnerable consumers. And then we will have what we've called also the community of vulnerable consumers. We're deciding on how to build that. But what we really need to get out of all this process is data to show that this innovative and integrated solution can be a solution to contribute to tackle energy poverty. So this is all for data collection and reporting to verify the results. These are just some of the documents that we've produced so far. I think at the very beginning there is the website, 10:30. There is the website. You can find all the documents on the website. So go and have a look at it, read our documents, and follow us also on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you very much for that talk. So our third speaker probably needs no introduction, Marta Garcia from EcoSurveys. So as we know, Marta has over 10 years experience as an energy consultant working in tackling energy poverty at the local, national and international level, and she's involved with the ASSIST project that we've just heard about.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Voy a hacer la ponencia en castellano para la audiencia que no está con el inglés, ¿no? Bueno, primero presentaros la parte nacional del proyecto ASSIST. Marina, que es la coordinadora del proyecto, nuestra jefa. Pero luego a nivel nacional pues estamos dos socios implementando, aparte de EcoSurveys, que somos una entidad sin ánimo de lucro, esta eléctrica de Alginet. ¿Por qué? Porque queríamos que estuvieran las compañías también implicadas en el desarrollo de proyectos de este tipo. ¿Por qué? Porque también tienen acceso directo a contadores, a datos de energía y nos puede facilitar y ayudar en la interpretación del impacto que los asesoramientos y la intervención pueden generar. Desde EcoSurveys llevamos ya más de 10 años trabajando en la pobreza energética y abordando, atendiendo a personas en situación de vulnerabilidad. Empezamos haciendo intervenciones en hogares, asesoramientos, optimizaciones tarifarias, auditorías energéticas en los hogares, en los domicilios, incluyendo materiales de bajo coste pues para mejorar la eficiencia y sobre todo para implicar a las personas que viven en esos hogares. Y este proyecto, el proyecto ASSIST, financiado por el programa Horizonte 2020 de la Comisión Europea, nos daba la oportunidad de avanzar un poco más en las experiencias que habíamos tenido previamente y nos daba cierta libertad para probar otro tipo de intervención. Entonces, a nivel nacional, cada socio del proyecto ha elegido un poco el tipo de intervención y nosotros sí que queríamos experimentar cómo sería formar a agentes energéticos que ya tuvieran una vinculación con aquellas personas en situación de vulnerabilidad. Nosotros mismos hemos ido a hogares a hacer intervenciones energéticas, hemos formado a profesionales, a agentes energéticos para que fueran ellos que asesoraran, pero queríamos ver si el impacto se podía potenciar con profesionales que tuvieran ya un vínculo con la persona afectada. ¿Por qué? Porque transmiten más confianza y porque creemos que eso también puede generar más ahorro, más conciencia, más información energética, ¿no? Estuvimos valorando diferentes perfiles profesionales y optamos por trabajar con profesionales de atención domiciliaria. ¿Por qué? Son profesionales de servicios sociales que tienen un vínculo muy fuerte con las personas a las que atienden, a las que asesoran y porque las visitan periódicamente. Entonces, si la idea inicial, ¿no?, nuestra tesis era si formamos a estos profesionales, les capacitamos en energía para que sean capaces de realizar un asesoramiento energético mientras hacen sus visitas regulares a estas familias, creemos que puede tener un impacto mayor que un agente energético profesional, como puedo ser yo misma, yendo a una casa de una persona a la que no conozco, ¿no? Y a partir de aquí empezamos y hemos planteado 3 aproximaciones, 3 experiencias diferentes que ahora mismo están en fase de implementación. En primer lugar, estamos trabajando con el Ayuntamiento de Barcelona, con el servicio de atención domiciliaria del Ayuntamiento de Barcelona, que está gestionado por varias empresas y entidades. Ya hemos formado a 80 profesionales del servicio de atención domiciliaria que ya están integrando el asesoramiento energético en las visitas que realizan a los hogares, ¿vale? Todavía no tenemos resultados con datos, pero la valoración en principio, o la valoración que tenemos hasta el momento, es muy positiva, por lo que os comentaba, porque el vínculo que tienen es muy fuerte y eso nos permite que si la profesional va a tu casa y te asesora y te propone un cambio de potencia contratada, un cambio de compañía, una gestión del bono social, bueno, la persona afectada se ve más confiada y con más seguridad para realizar ese cambio, porque es una persona de confianza. El segundo piloto, que este sí que aún está en fase formativa, es con el servicio de atención domiciliaria en el Consell Comarcal del Maresme. Este es un convenio también con Diputación de Barcelona y aquí estamos formando a 11 trabajadoras del servicio de atención domiciliaria que son municipales de los diferentes municipios del Consell Comarcal. ¿Por qué? Porque así también valorábamos 2 ámbitos, un ámbito muy urbano, como puede ser el de Barcelona, con otros ámbitos de municipios más pequeños, también para poder valorar el impacto. También el tipo de gestión, ¿no?, de los propios servicios de atención domiciliaria. Podíamos comparar un modelo como el de Barcelona o, en el caso con las profesionales municipales que estamos trabajando en el Consell Comarcal del Maresme. Actualmente, estas 11 profesionales están ahora en fase formativa. La formación son 40 horas de formación divididas en una parte presencial, en las que les damos unas clases teóricas, varios días, y luego se complementa con una formación online a través de una plataforma del programa Assist, en la que a través de unos vídeos pues vamos trabajando los conceptos para facilitar luego su intervención. Y el último grupo, vamos a trabajar, aún no lo hemos activado, empezaremos con la formación en enero, es con los profesionales de apoyo a las personas con discapacidad, y aquí trabajamos con Cocarmi, y la idea es formar aquí a 20 profesionales para que incorporen en su día a día el vector energía. Seguro que las profesionales ya les dan consejos y asesoramientos de cualquier ámbito, ¿no?, de la vida cotidiana, y como la energía es un tema complejo, pues creíamos que con esta formación lo que vamos a facilitar es que se naturalice y se integre de forma cómoda el asesoramiento energético. Y bueno, básicamente deciros que no tenemos datos todavía, pero los vamos a tener porque de todas estas personas vamos a analizar consumos y vamos a valorar realmente el impacto. Pero lo que os comentaba, de momento la valoración es muy positiva a nivel de formación, también porque estas propias profesionales están diciendo que les está sirviendo para sus casas, para sus familiares, por lo tanto es un efecto bola de nieve, no solo para su trabajo, sino para sus vidas. Y lo que nos ha gustado sobre todo de este perfil profesional es su motivación, ¿no?, por conseguir dar un asesoramiento efectivo y totalmente transparente a nivel energético. Y bueno, para cualquier duda o que queráis, luego en la ronda de preguntas lo comentamos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for finishing it early as well, which is definitely a bonus. So last but by no means least, is Maria Jeliazkova. Hopefully I haven't butchered your surname too much there. So Maria is an experienced researcher. She's engaged in review, analysis and recommendations in the field of anti-poverty strategies. She's a member of the European Anti-Poverty Network's Executive Committee, and she also works on the ASSIST programme. So thank you very much.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank very much for the opportunity to participate. Listening to the inputs in the morning and of Catalonia authorities, I would say that it's obviously a good practice, and it will be very helpful if, for example, the European Commission presses other local authorities and countries, especially where the problems are not so much addressed, to follow this good practice. As already said, I'm here representing the European Anti-Poverty Network. This is the biggest anti-poverty organization in EU. Currently, it has 31 national networks and 14 EU-wide organizations. It is financially supported by the European Commission, and currently we are a member of the ASSIST consortium. This EU project, which Marina already presented, and Marta described the local actions here. So I'll focus on another area of this project, the policy orientation, the necessity to develop vulnerable consumers protection framework. This is a work in process. So here I will present some of the questions we are working on. Having in mind the state, the dynamics, and concerns about energy poverty, we think it is important to try to answer to the question how to promote an appropriate working mechanism for the fight against energy poverty at European and national level and local as well. This means to improve the political decision-making process in order to find better public policies to cope with the issue. So we know that there are many different actions at local and national level, but trying to consider the situation, the directions, the problems, the increasing problems with energy poverty, in order to better address the problems, we consider that there is obvious necessity to make improvements at all the levels, including in EU. So when we try to see what is okay, if something is okay, or what is needed to be done, we find several issues on which we think that we need to focus. I'm sorry. The first one we consider important is the, so to say, the deliberate vagueness about the problem, somehow supported by the different levels of policies. We consider that the unwillingness to have an agreed EU definition is counterproductive and non-evidence-based, because this vagueness hinders our actions, including at local and national level, on in different areas. It is very difficult to address the problem, to assess the achievements, if any, to improve the legal framework, to have statistical data, to make comparisons and ability to monitor. to have clear criteria what needs to be done. So it is very important to increase our efforts to have clear understanding, because otherwise what we do in our actions included, if we try to find where energy poor people are and vulnerable consumers are, we go to the measures already undertaken. But these measures already undertaken, mainly by the social policy, they try deliberately to decrease the number of people that are in energy poverty, because they follow financial restrictions. So it is very difficult trying to use these social policy measures, which in principle are very important, but as already said, reactive, to use them in order to have clear concept about energy poverty and vulnerable consumers. The other basic problem is the inconsistency in addressing the different causes of energy poverty. Some of them, they were mentioned already, the most important, the quality of housing, the incomes and prices. And the problem with this, to try to address these three causes one by one, because it's obviously incomes and prices have to be linked. We need to consider the purchasing power of incomes of different groups in order to address the energy poverty. And what is more, it seems, whatever analysis to be done, that basic generator of energy poverty in EU are policies. So some policies generate energy poverty and others, restricted in the social policy area usually, try to some extent alleviate them. This is obviously not consistent if we don't address all the different generators of energy poverty and seriously to try to find some balances and decrease the pressure of policies that do stimulate energy poverty. But why is it so? Why public policies at different levels do generate energy poverty? Most probably, and there was this locomotive illustration was extremely important, most probably because the inability, the lack of opportunity of vulnerable groups, energy poor people, and what is very important, future vulnerable consumers to impact on the decision making. We need to reconsider the whole working mechanism in order to have more democratic decision-making process, more abilities of people that are suffering energy poverty to influence the decision-making. Otherwise, the locomotive will speed up, and this is supported by public policies, and the distance will grow even further. So, we need a new policy mix addressing energy poverty in EU. Multi-pillar, multi-layer, and multi-level. Multi-pillar means that we have to address consistently the causes. We have to consider the prices, the profits, the taxes and levies included in indirect consumption, which we know that impoverish people, and consider why these taxes and levies for renewables are not paid by progressive taxation, progressive direct taxation. Multi-layer, we need to improve the policy cycle, especially the social impact assessment, with more intensive evaluation of policies against energy poverty and their interactions with policies aimed at developing of renewable energy, and multi-level, to leave at local authorities and national authorities to tackle with the problems when we have joint policies for energies is very doubtful. This is speeding up the locomotive. When we have strategic energy technologies plans, as we have, all of us, we need to have strategic anti-poverty and energy poverty technologies plans. We don't have these strategic energy technologies plans are absolutely distant from what is going on with the people and the groups with decreasing incomes, low middle class and poor groups. So, having to finish, we think that we seriously have to address the problem. Why? Is the current paradox. European Union could find possible solutions to complex technological problems, but has big difficulties to find solutions to social problems. Some of these solutions are very well known from the very history of the European Union with the welfare states. Other solutions are not so difficult. It obviously has to do with the inequalities. If public policies, European and national, support growing inequalities, the possibility to address different phases of poverty, energy poverty included, are very doubtful. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, everyone. So we have some time now for an open discussion and some questions to all of the speakers, but I'm just going to use my privilege here as chair and jump in with one quick question before I open it up to the floor. So I think a theme that came through in a number of the presentations was just the complexity of energy poverty. So this is in terms of the drivers of energy poverty, the symptoms that households might exhibit, and also the way in which that might manifest in different outcomes. But I was thinking about those households that are the hardest to reach, so the ones who fall between the cracks in terms of eligibility for support. So you were mentioning in the first presentation around what if you're not paying enough tax to qualify. So based on your experience, how do you think we can really reach that most difficult to help group?
Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Harriet, for the question. Well, it's obviously a very complex issue, and thank you for asking me, because I think it's one of the points I wanted to make, but I didn't have time. I think that energy companies, water companies have a very strong role to play, because when somebody is systematically not paying their bills, either their water or electricity bills, well, it's the symptom of something. It may not be the case for everyone, because some old people, for instance, they prefer just to starve rather than to have any debt. So it's of course a dangerous. It's dangerous to take only this criteria into consideration, but maybe involving very deeply the companies would be something interesting. In the UK, there is also this priority access register that could be developed in other countries, for instance.
I say shortly. There are some experiences in the people that are most vulnerable. For example, using these funds for European aid. So there is some experience, this one. Another one is linked to the companies. If companies are willing or they're pressed to give information on different prices, of course, there are institutions in the countries that could compare and find these people. But this information is not available.
I agree that it is the most difficult target, even because as vulnerable consumers, as energy poor consumers, they usually tend to close themselves in the house, so they have very little social life or social interaction. One of the best actors in that case are the social actors, because those are the ones who have the experience and also, if you want to say, the mission to help them on the field. So mainly it's them, which is not, having said that, it's not that easy, because also for social actors to work with that target is difficult. One of the suggestions that a researcher, an Italian researcher who's very keen in communication and things like that, gave me was to go to the places where these people have to go. I mean, okay, some of them will go to church, some of them will not, but they will all go to the supermarket to buy some food. So the idea was to go where they have to go. And in those places, not reach them as, okay, I know you need some help, I'm here to help you, but trying to start a dialogue on the long run, which will then finally build a trusty relationship and then be able to engage them also on the energy issues, but tackle them through different and sideways.
Yeah, and also to complement what Marina was saying, I would suggest also to incorporate the health system centers, primary centers, where all these people, all we go to doctors, so it's a good place to identify.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yes. Also schools. I mean, school teachers, they can be very good relays. They see some kids are always cold or they come to their homework, so it can be an interesting point.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So I'd now like to open it up to the audience. Would anybody like to start us off with a first question there, please? Okay. Maybe we start on the left and then move over to the gentleman on the right.
Hola, soy Sandra Artieda y trabajo soy la coordinadora del Servei d'Assessorament Energètic de Barberà del Vallès. Y cada día estamos viendo y relacionándonos con personas que constantemente las compañías suministradoras están incumpliendo todos los derechos y de hecho estamos en contacto directo. Entonces, mi pregunta, pues aquí como es a nivel europeo, es qué tipo de poder o a nivel europeo se podría ejercer, ya que yo estoy en España ahora o Cataluña, hay para poder pues que no se vulneren tanto estos derechos, ¿no? Porque nos hemos cansado y visto hoy cómo las compañías pues tienen estos grandes beneficios, vulneran los derechos. Entonces, ¿qué tipo de poder hay a nivel europeo para que en España pues podamos, no sé, pueda cumplir más estos derechos, ¿no? Todo esto que se está hablando hoy.
Okay, and if we could just take the second question as well, and then we can answer two at once, if that's okay with the panel.
Buenas tardes, me llamo Eduardo Molist, trabajo en el tema también de pobreza energética y quisiera preguntar dos cuestiones a nivel europeo. La primera sería si se plantea desde la Unión Europea un impuesto, una taxa sobre beneficios que fuera directamente destinada a cubrir la pobreza energética, con especificidad. La segunda pregunta es si han hablado de la dificultad, pero si hay un planteamiento serio de hacer una regulación a nivel europeo sobre lo que podrían ser empresas estratégicas, básicamente las de energía, para facilitar una competencia de mercado y una regulación similar entre todos los países. Gracias.
Okay, who wants to?
Sorry, I won't speak in Spanish. I will reply in English. But I could answer to bits of both of the questions. I think that something that we have to really take into consideration is about the first question is that a lot of the big energy companies are transnational. They are acting in different member states, in different countries. So it would be very important for policies applied in one country to be replicated in others. I'm thinking, for instance, about EDF, one of the French giants. EDF is giving a lot of money to fund some projects about energy poverty. They are financing also a network called Rappel with the energy poverty actors, so it's something very interesting. And to answer the second question, there is some kind of a tax that exists also in France about obliging energy companies to give some money to fund sustainable projects, and there is an even bigger fund for energy poverty. So I think it could be interesting also to look into this and propose something that saying that it already exists and it's already enforceable. And a lot of money that is used in France to cure energy poverty comes from those special taxes. They call it energy performance certificates, CEE.
I think the questions are more to EU institutions than to ourselves. But anyway, we can... First, I would like to say that I support the questions. So there is obvious need of answer. For the protecting the legal rights, I'm afraid it's very specific topic, and you have to go case by case if the rights are violated. But I agree that there is a need more to be done for consumers' protection and better understanding by people their rights, and when they can go to courts with this, because it's not very clear, in fact, not only about energy, but for many other consumer rights as well. And if there could be EU regulation, we press for that. There are regulations from EU addressing different problems, increasing, retiring, criteria for cucumbers. So we know that there are some regulations. Why these regulations are not in the social sphere, it's very problematic. But this reminds me of what was said in the morning. We need a common front in order to try to do something in the social sphere.
That's exactly what I wanted to say, that before thinking of solutions, which of course we need solutions, we first have to define what energy poverty is. What we had tried to do at the beginning of the project was to find a definition. We have thoroughly analyzed the situation in the 6 countries involved. We have analyzed the situation also in the other countries. One partner has done a comparison between the situation in all the countries, a very specific comparison, and the result is that the situation in all the countries is so different that at the moment a common picture is still a dream, and therefore a common solution will have to be defined once we know what is the common picture. But first of all, let's think of how energy poverty, we can think of at European level.
Bueno, y casi yo creo que para concluir, ¿no? Un poco comentabas, ¿no? Tú te has presentado como trabajadora, ¿no? Del punto de atención energética. Yo creo que eventos como este, un congreso de pobreza energética, en el que hemos hecho un esfuerzo para incorporar a personas que trabajan en la esfera europea, precisamente es para que palpen, para que conozcan estas realidades a nivel local y luego puedan implementarlas arriba. O sea que yo creo que es muy importante visibilizaros y denunciar aquellos casos, evidentemente, pero creo que es muy interesante. Y luego lo que comentaba Marín, sí que es cierto que todos los países tienen la obligación, todas las empresas suministradoras tienen la obligación de aportar un dinero en función de su facturación, según el artículo 7 de la directiva. En España eso lo gestiona el IDA, el Instituto para la Diversificación de Ahorro en Energía, y se llama Fondo Nacional de Eficiencia Energética, pero lamentablemente no prioriza la pobreza energética. Y ese es uno de los frentes en los que estamos trabajando desde las organizaciones que nos dedicamos a promover la lucha contra la pobreza energética, es que parte de este fondo, parte de esta obligación se destine directamente, ¿por qué no?, a la rehabilitación de hogares en situación de vulnerabilidad, por ejemplo.
Unfortunately, that's us out of time for questions, but the speakers will be around for the rest of the day. I'm very sorry about that, but we're standing between a room full of people and lunch. So if you want to... maybe Lara can give some final closing remarks before. But if you do have questions, please do grab the speakers over lunch.
Thank you. Lara Blake, DG Justice and Consumers at the Commission. So I just wanted to make a couple of points. Firstly, Maria's presentation, wonderful, but we do have some issues. For example, when you look at the balance of power between industry and consumers, there is no balance. So we're working very closely to strengthen the mandate for the consumer associations across the EU to ensure that they can actually have a stronger voice and that we can somehow get rid of that mismatch to address issues. The other thing is when it comes to EU energy policy, some of you will be aware we have this question of subsidiarity. That means energy policy, the EU can legislate. When it comes to welfare and other issues, we're very restricted in what we can do. And that's where we have an issue, and I think there needs to be more recognition at a national policy level of the constraints the EU does face, and therefore welfare issues like this, the externalities of EU policy making, need to be addressed at national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if I could just ask you all to give a quick round of applause to our four fantastic speakers, and thank you very much for your time and attention.